Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Hyatt with Big Purpose, Big Impact, and I'd really like to welcome you to the Purpose Driven Business Summit. In this session, we're going to be hearing from Ben Higgins of Generous International, and I know a lot of you have been very excited to hear what he's up to, and I'm looking forward to hearing more as well. But before we jump into talking with Ben and hearing about what he's doing, I want to just give you a few logistical reminders. So we want to encourage you to be active and engage with other participants at the summit. So we've set up a Facebook group that's private, that's just for people attending the summit. So if you go into Facebook under groups and go to Purpose Summit, if you haven't already signed up for that, we're glad to let you in. And we really want to encourage you to use that as a way to network with other folks, share your ahas, ask any questions you have, and engage with each other. In the days of Zoom, when we're not all sitting in the same room, sometimes it's hard to feel like you're really part of it and you're just watching. So I really do want to encourage you to be as active as possible in there. Enough of that. Let's move on, and let me tell you just a couple things about Ben. So he's a familiar face to many of you, but there's a lot you probably don't know about Ben Higgins and what he's been up to. So a lot of you know him from his time with the Bachelor/Bachelorette franchise, but he's actually been doing a lot of other business-related things. So he got a degree in public affairs from Indiana University, from the School of Public Affairs and Environmental Affairs. And shortly after that, he moved to Colorado and worked with a software company in Golden in a range of roles. That company served the financial industry. And he's recently opened a restaurant here in Denver. But the thing he's really going to talk to us about today is what started as Generous Coffee and has now expanded into lots of other things. And he's really on a mission to create a movement called Generous, and I'm excited to hear more about it. And I know you all are too. So welcome, Ben. Thank you so much for making time to do this. I know you just got back to Denver. You know, you're all over the place a lot. So that you're sharing some time with us is great. So thanks.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
So why don't we start? Tell us why you got involved with Generous Coffee, which is, I guess, how it started. Tell us how that all rolled out.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think to make it helpful, we got to start at the beginning.
Okay.
And I'll tell this story quick because there's a lot of elements to it. But when I was 15 years old, I went to Central America for the first time on a disaster relief trip.
Okay.
And during this time in my life, I saw true poverty for the first time.
Yep.
And I would say, in short, in simple terms, very quickly, my worldview had been rocked. The way I saw the world was no longer the same. But unfortunately, the organization I was with specialized in disaster relief. They would go in and they'd pass out food boxes and they'd pass out necessary items for survival. And that is a very helpful tool when disaster exists. It isn't exactly the best solution for sustainability and long-term growth. And so I left that trip and came back the following year. And what I noticed was the people were still impoverished. There had been no progress to any type of sustainable living. The healthcare system was still lacking. The educational system was still lacking. The leadership programs were lacking. Infrastructure was deteriorating. And it angered me. As a kid, I guess I wasn't emotionally mature enough to understand why, and definitely wasn't intellectually knowledgeable enough to understand what to do and to find a solution. But somebody on that trip was a buddy of mine who was 4 years older than me, left that trip. We were talking about what we had learned, what we were feeling. And I told him, hey, I just felt like something was wrong. You know, it shouldn't be this way forever. And he said, well, I was thinking the same thing. And he's told me he had a solution. He started a company, a nonprofit at that time called Humanity and Hope United, based on our experience in Central America, with the idea that we could ask these communities, what do they need, what do they want, and what do they dream of, partner with them in kinship, so that there was no hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
go in and help partner with them to build sustainable communities. Well, this idea was working well, and I've been on the board of this organization for years now. But just like any nonprofit, and a lot of people out there watching this, and you yourself understand, if we want to build a nonprofit that is developing sustainable change in communities that are lacking, you have to have a sustainable fundraising model as well. And calling our friends and family every month asking for money wasn't sustainable. It wasn't fun. I really didn't
Right.
like it.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah. And so on a trip, we came up with the idea that there's a few ways to build sustainable fundraising models. One is to partner with a large organization that can back you consistently. Another one would be to get a large sum of money, put it in some type of endowment, trust, some interest-bearing financial tool that you can use that interest to sustain your nonprofit. Or we could create our own business, sell products through this business, tell the story through this business, and then donate those profits to nonprofits. The one that I'm talking about, Humanity and Hope United, would be our main beneficiary for the future. So that's where Generous came from. It was a desire to be the engine for fundraising and good behind nonprofits fighting human-facing injustice in the world.
Oh, I love that, because like you say, too often nonprofit fundraising, goes on cycles, and at least the US based stuff, there's like endless series of galas and silent auctions and donation pitches, especially around Christmas, and that you really saw there's a different way to do this and be able to do good, sell a great product, and create sustainable income, I think is great. And I also totally appreciate that in that early trip that you took, like it rocked your world, and
Definitely.
you came out of it a different person, and have, like, I can completely relate to that, because I went to Haiti when I was in graduate school, and it was shocking to see, it's one thing to read about the level of poverty some places, but it is really a different thing to see it up close and personal. So I appreciate that you let that affect you, and you didn't let it go as soon as you got home. So Generous started as a coffee company, right?
It did. Well, it did. So we, at the time, when Generous first started and we started formulating the model, we wanted to find this product that not only told a really powerful story behind it. And so if you don't know this, and a lot of people don't, coffee is a pretty corrupt business from start to finish. The producers are growing some of the best coffee in the world. They're working so hard night and day to harvest this coffee, and they're getting paid pennies on the dollar for coffee that is then being sold at a pretty high profit margin back here in the US. And so one of our desires with this new company at the time that we were trying to start was to find a product that defied most religious boundaries, defied most geographic boundaries, that connected people groups. So connected people from different races, different religions, orientations, identities together, and that brought together what we thought could be a common good. And really, coffee fit into that. I think there's two things that people seem to congregate over. It's coffee and alcohol, and we didn't want to get in the alcohol business, and I didn't really know how. And so we started with coffee. We wanted to source specialty grade coffee that's single origin, that's traceable. And so that's kind of our first product that our product initiative. However, since then, we have joined on other products that have a story behind them as well. But coffee is what we're best known for. That's why when you see the name Generous Coffee, yes, Generous International is our formal umbrella holdings company, but Generous Coffee is what really is our marketeer and what our flagship product is.
Well, it's definitely delicious, and those of you that haven't had any, I definitely encourage you to get yourself some. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back to what you were saying about Generous and the profit from the products you sell actually being able to support nonprofits. So tell us a little more about that, because one of the things that I was seeing online is you took a bit of a unique approach to that, where the resources can actually be used for operational expenses, which a lot of folks don't want to fund that. So tell us more about that.
Well, we first off, we really care about people at Generous. And so I have a tagline that I use to encourage our team. And because oftentimes when you get in the world of for-purpose business or nonprofit initiatives, it's overwhelming and it's hard to celebrate wins because there's always the next thing. There's always the next thing to accomplish. And so what we say at Generous is that we care about people so much that if one person's life is bettered through the efforts of Generous, then this has all been worth it. And in 30 years, if Generous still exists and one person's life was changed for the better through Generous, then this was worth it. That's how much we value people. So we'll celebrate the small tasks to help us get there. So I say all of this to give some type of lead in to what we're donating for. Okay. Well, we want to partner with human inspired and injustice facing human causes. So yes, there's great causes that care about animals, and there's great causes that care about the bees. I'm a big fan of bees. I think we need the bees. But at Generous, our lane is humans. We want to fight poverty, and that comes from a couple different lanes. That's lack of education, lack of leadership, lack of infrastructure, lack of health care. But with all that being said, there's great nonprofits out there doing it already. There's great social organizations doing it already. And they have a really easy time typically raising funds for those initiatives. If they need to start a new doctor's practice in the communities, it's not that difficult to raise the funds for that. If they want to send a kid to school, it's pretty easy to get people to adopt a kid to send them to school. What's really hard is as you said, the operational expenses that go into the organization. There are people working hard to make these things happen. They should be benefited. And so we want to pay for the boring stuff. We want to, in a sense, fall on the sword for those who are on the ground fighting and say, hey, we want you to be able to focus on your mission and vision, the thing that inspires you, the thing that's motivated you. We want you to focus on that so you don't have to focus so much on raising your funds to pay yourself. We'll take that on. We'll carry that burden because we know that that's our role in this. We'll take on the burden. We have enough confidence in what Generous is doing to know that we can handle the boring stuff and still celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I completely appreciate that you all understood that and made that a core piece of what you're doing, because I've been working with nonprofits for 20 plus years, and people forget that, okay, they're out there in the front lines, maybe using a lot of volunteers, but none of that's free. You've got to have good staff that earn a salary to really be able to achieve the mission and grow what they're doing and serve more people. And, paying for pens and copy paper isn't the sexy stuff, right? But it has to happen. So I think congratulations that you picked that was one really important way to support the frontline work that the organizations that you support are doing. So your primary beneficiary is the one that your friend started, correct? And then you mentioned some of the other types of organizations. So what's the criteria you use when because of course all nonprofits need support, and of course they all want to be aligned with Generous. So what do you look for when you're looking at a nonprofit? What's your decision making around that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And yes, Humanity and Hope United is our main beneficiary, but they are not our only beneficiary. In fact, in 2019, I think at the end of the year, we had monetarily or materially supported 32 organizations, which is a big win for us in year 2 of operation. Yes. we've thought about this a lot at the beginning, and it came down to a few things that we have learned through experience and through some not so great partners of ours. We have messed up before, and we know that's a common concern, especially in today's age when a lot of people are being asked for money to support organizations that aren't doing what they say they're doing. So this is how we set it up. We want to invest into sustainable change. We want to invest into organizations that are focused on helping people feel and be empowered. And so we want people-focused, sustainable change organizations. That's our lane. That's what we look for. And that means a bunch of different things. We also then, when we invest monetarily, we want to find organizations that are effective with their funds. And so when they say, hey, we're going to go fight child trafficking, we'll say that is a great cause that we are 100% behind. But how are you doing that? Are you rehabilitating the victims? When you find these victims, what is the process to helping these victims heal in whatever way they can? And then are you actually doing it? Are you just hoping to do it and nothing's really happening? Are you actually doing it?
Yeah.
And then they have to be efficient. We want to see that what they're doing, what they said they're doing, that their effectiveness is efficient. And so if they're asking for $100,000 from Generous, that I know that $100,000 is being used to its maximum amount. Now, again, we get it, that you have to pay your staff. You have to pay for the pen and paper. You have to pay for the boring stuff. I know that. We support that. We celebrate that. We get it.
Yeah.
But are you efficient with those resources? And we have a couple of different guidelines that we follow to do that. Once we see all those things, and internally we decide that this is a match, then we joyfully give. Like, it is a celebration to give to, and to celebrate with them and hopefully support them long term. But that's our criteria. We don't ask for anything in return necessarily. All we ask for is that those things match, that they're human facing and human focused, they're sustainable, they're effective, and they're efficient.
Yeah. Well, I do a lot of work with nonprofits, helping them measure their social impact. And so, I appreciate what you're saying about, okay, you can't just be talking about it. Like, what are you actually doing out there? And are you moving the needle? And are you doing it in an efficient way? Those are important things to look at, because, the line can be out the door of all the nonprofits that want support and need support. And you can't help everybody. So that you've actually narrowed down and been, pretty clear what you're willing to do. And then, as you say, you give joyfully. So that's a great thing. So the 32 organizations that you supported last year, like, where are they located?
Oh, all across the U.S. And even internationally. We have partners that have came through internationally. A lot of what we do is donating coffee or our bracelets or T-shirts. We do apparel to organizations who want to resell that for fundraisers or on their trips, whatever that may be. We do that often. Because we do donate our profits, it's hard for us to donate our material goods all the time. We do ask, for a partnership in that, and for, for nonprofits to purchase something from Generous to make us be able to stay alive long term.
Yeah, right.
But they really are all over. We don't have really a centralized giving network. It's people from, everything from like the children's hospitals. Sometimes, their missions and their desires and their needs, Generous can help with, and we love giving to the children's hospitals around the areas. So
do you have an online process through your website that people have to fill out a form with the basic information, and then, like, who makes the decision? Do you have an employee committee, or the founders make it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's an advisory group, and so the founders, along with the owners, not all the owners are founders, with then the top 2 tenured employees at Generous, we sit on a group and vote and talk through. If for example, if the advisory group can't meet, then I make that decision with my team. But for the most part, we like to discuss it internally because it allows everybody to feel more connected. Those who are distant owners who can't be involved every day, this is a good way for us to connect again and to talk about what's going on and how our network and our influence is continuing to grow and do what we always hoped it would.
Right. So you talk about Generous as moving, from just a product-based give back kind of a business to really creating a movement.
Yeah.
So tell us more about what is the movement and how are you getting people involved, and anybody listening, how can they get involved?
Yeah. So one thing we noticed early on was we wanted to build this organization to be about the outsider. The human who feels like the party's going on inside and we're stuck on the outside looking through the window wishing we were invited. So this Generous is a place for the outsider to connect with those who feel like insiders. Generous is inclusive. Well, with that being said, we realize that most people connect through generosity, through giving, through celebrating and recognizing need, and then breaking down the barriers for us to be able to give joyfully, as I said.
Yeah.
And so we asked anybody that wanted to be and live a generous lifestyle. So anybody that wanted an excuse to live a generous lifestyle, might be a better way to say it, to join on to an ambassador program. Our ambassadors then are responsible for advocacy in their areas and their families to share it. We would love for them to share Generous in our products, but we don't force that. What we ask is that they would share a generous message, that they would be their heads would be on a swivel to recognize need and to give to whoever is in need. And that's really where the movement started, is Generous as a brand is the engine or the motivator for people to have an excuse to live generously, because I think sometimes it's just easier too when we have that excuse to, and that kind of push from behind. And so they're involved again in selling our products if they want. They don't have to. They're involved in social media campaigns that we do. If people want to do that, they can reach out again on our website. That's generouscoffee.com and sign up. We do applications a few times a year. And this network has continued to grow. The people have continued to bond together and meet over breakfast or lunch to talk about how they can be more generous, what nonprofits need support in their areas, what fundraisers they could do. And it's been really awesome to see. I always say, Sue, I lead it with hands wide open, because if I try to control it, or if Generous as an umbrella tried to control it too much, it would never have the impact it has. And because we've just hopefully asked people to be generous, they've taken this thing and moved it far beyond anything we could have imagined at the beginning.
Well, I love the whole that you're the catalyst for this series of ripples, really, that can happen. And like you say, you don't know how that's going to end up, but it's creating more good in the world, even beyond what you all are doing directly. So that, I think that's a wonderful thing. So ambassador program, that's a great way to help get your word out. So I want to cycle back to a couple of things. One, when you were first getting Generous off the ground, you kind of had a brave way of getting some initial seed money by doing pre-orders. So some of the people that will be participating in the summit are in the process of trying to figure out how to launch purpose-driven companies. And are trying to figure, well, how do we make this work? So can you share a little bit about what you did there? Because I think it's one model that could be useful for people to hear about.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, 100% can. So we initially wanted to bootstrap this company to try to do it debt-free to our best of our abilities. So one of the ways we did that was we identified the need in the world. So we identified that poverty exists and that there's an injustice that causes most poverty. And we identified that we thought we could help fight poverty. So that was our mission and our vision. So once we identified that, then we came up with the business model that we thought would be sustainable so that we could effectively fight this mission. Then we started the messaging of it. Okay, how is this going to be messaged? What exactly are we going to donate? What is the stories we're going to tell? What products do we want to sell? How are people going to get involved in this thing? What's our differentiators? Well, once we laid all those things out, we started to storytell, because we think the most powerful thing any of us have is our stories and the stories of others. And sharing stories is really when the magic happens. So we started a pre-order campaign telling stories. We promised that we would sell coffee for a purpose. People then trusted us because we told an authentic story. Now, there was that level of trust there. We had to have people trust us. But what we did is we launched our site. We said we would have coffee available in a month if they bought it. Everybody knew, because we were open about it, that we didn't have coffee on hand then. So once we sold the bags of coffee, we went out and found the coffee, shipped it to the US, roasted it, and distributed it. So before we ever had a product in hand, we did a pre-order campaign so that we would then have the money to go out and buy the coffee. And that's how we started the snowball. It wasn't bringing on capital from outside investors. We have done that now a little bit. But at the beginning, it was really the snowball of a pre-order campaign that allowed us to reinvest into our business and our organization so that we could donate long-term.
Well, I think that's useful for people to hear about that. Are there any things you learned from doing that would be like tips or words to the wise for other folks that might be thinking? Were there any pitfalls you hadn't anticipated that you might be able to help other people steer clear of?
Yeah, I mean, I think the messaging of it,
Okay.
to be careful of how much you're messaging coming from a place of scarcity. And so scarcity isn't attractive, nor is it really ever the truthful story. That if you as an organization are trying to be a fruitful investor into the injustice fighting organizations of the world, always begging for or always coming from a place of woe is me is never an attractive story to tell. It's never going to give you the message that you hope to have, even if it is what you feel like at times. And so I would say, don't come from a place of scarcity. Talk about what you hope to fulfill and dream of. The next messaging point I would say is always be authentic, though. To never blur the lines, to never try. I mean, in today's day and age, it's way too easy. It's way too easy to see through the blinds that we put on others' eyes and our own eyes. And so be authentic. That when you're authentic, people are attracted to that and they want to join on to that and they want to help with that. And finally, I would just say, make sure your messaging is clear. So simplify your messaging so that when you do the pre-order campaign or you do these little startup initiatives, that everybody knows what they're investing into. Don't make it too convoluted. Don't try to save the world with one product. It's not going to happen. So simplify your messaging so that when I buy a bag of coffee from Generous, I know I'm buying it because it's life-changing coffee. And I know that it's life-changing because it's poverty fighting. And that's about all I need to know, is that I trust the organization to do with those funds that I purchase with what they need to do to fight poverty. And then from there, I leave it up to them. And drink good coffee.
Yeah, right. Well, I think your comments on the messaging are really important ones, because like, I think you're right. Sometimes some organizations spend too much time in the, oh, woe is the world side of it, as opposed to really inspiring hope and like, okay, we have a solution that's doing something positive. So really focusing on that, like, I agree with you, that makes a ton of sense. So for the folks that are trying to narrow down what to focus on, like you all did a good job of, thinking about, okay, where can we do the most good? We can't take on everything. We need to focus on something where we feel like we can effectively make some change. Like, what kind of tips would you have for people on, like sometimes people want to create world peace or like get rid of every social problem on the planet, and like, it's not going to happen. So any guidance for people?
Yeah, definitely. It's a question I get asked often. A few years ago, I did a speaking tour and I went to, I think, 30 locations around the US speaking on behalf of Generous. And a common question I would get every time is more of a sentiment from somebody in the audience saying, hey, I want to help,
Yeah.
I have a passion to help. I just don't know where to start. And so let's start there. There's a lot of things out there there's a lot of injustice in this world. And again, be it humans, be it animals, be it environment, be it political, be it religious, there's a lot of
Yep.
injustice in this world that we can all, no matter where we come from, identify.
Yeah.
I always say this. I'll say this and then I want to preface it with something.
Okay.
So when you want to find out where to help, because we all need to help. So that's the start here, is that all of us have a purpose. All of us have skills and talents. All of us, every single one of us have something to offer. So I believe, not only because of my background of faith, but also just because of my worldview of growing up, is I believe that we all have a commanded or a purpose to giving back. That this world won't function unless we're others focused, unless we're loving our neighbor well. So I'll start there.
Okay.
When you want to find out where to help, find out what makes you the angriest. Like if you're sitting on your couch at night watching the news and you get fired up over something, write it down. What is it about that makes you mad? Look at the world around you. Look at poverty-stricken areas of the U.S. Look at poverty-stricken areas of your city, your neighborhood. Maybe if those aren't pulling at your heart, maybe something internationally does. Maybe the lack of bees in the world. I keep going back to maybe lack of bees. It's like just really firing you up all the time. And you identify what makes you angriest. Take a deep breath. Find out what solution you think is going to help and not hurt. So that's the second big thing I would say in a bullet point here would be find out what makes you angriest. Second off, find out and think about what solution helps and not hurts, because a lot of people have really good intentions going into the solution, but it ends up hurting others or hurting the thing they care about the most in the long run. So be really smart and really diligent in finding out how to help and not hurt. And then third, if your solution doesn't exist in the world, well, then that's a really great place to start solving it yourself and to building something from the ground up. But hey, we're in 2020. There's a lot of great things going on right now. There's also really awesome opportunities and organizations and people who have already started fighting injustice to wherever you see it already and are doing it well and have built the groundwork and the foundation. And they're sitting at their homes or their offices right now going, we need help. We need volunteers. We need staff. We need support. We need help. Don't be afraid to join into their teams, to build your own influence in those teams. And so my third point to that would be not only do we need to also find ways to build new solutions and to be innovative, and maybe that means starting it for yourself like we did at Generous, or maybe that means joining on to a team that already exists. And that's how I get started, is to identify those things, because I think once you do all that and you see what path is best for you to either form something on your own or to join on, then the next steps will be clearer and easier.
Well, I really appreciate that you mentioned, okay, you don't always have to create it yourself, that there's already a lot of cool things going on out there. So if your point to like, okay, so what do you really want to take on? What's the issue that matters, that really riles you up? Like getting clear on that. But then, we've got Google these days. So like spending some time and actually finding out, all right, what organizations already have programs that work in this area and what do they do? And, lots of times when I'm helping businesses figure out their philanthropy programs, oftentimes I hear, oh, well, we want to create our own foundation or where we're going to start this program. And I'm like, well, did you know that there's this great nonprofit down the street that is doing something like that? Why don't you partner with them? And the business folks bring certain perspectives and skills to the table, and the nonprofit does too. So like, I think that's an excellent point for people. You don't always have to recreate the wheel or create the wheel. Sometimes it's already there and you can maybe help strengthen it. So I think that's a really excellent point to make. Um, so a couple more things, and then I know you're busy and have lots of other things to do, but like, I'm sure we could all ask you questions all day long because what you're up to is fascinating. But given who some of the people are listening, are there any other tips about how to get something going that you might have for people other than what you've already shared?
Yeah, I do. This is my secret sauce.
Okay.
Generous is my main focus. It is what takes up most of my time. But I do have a few other investments and a few other things that I do focus on.
Okay.
And so about a year and a half ago, I sat down to do a little writing project. And I was like, what is it that I feel like is the secret sauce to, I guess for a lack of a better term, success? I don't think success is actually defined. I don't know if we can ever reach it. I don't know what that even means. If it's monetary, if it's impact, there's 1,000 different ways to,
Yep.
like, what would, when I look at the world, not at my life, I don't want to say I've been successful. I'm just getting started here.
Yeah.
But when I look at my life and I look at the world around me, what is it that when I see people thriving, what is that secret sauce to what they've done?
Mm-hmm.
And there's one thing that I've consistently felt in my business and seen in others is that these people surround themselves with people more talented than themselves. So they're reaching out to everybody has a mentor of sense. So if there's an injustice or if there's a mission that you want to pursue, helping find a healthy solution for, reach out to somebody who maybe knows a lot more than you to start learning from them, who has been in it for a while. Maybe they're not even in that exact lane that you want to go to, but they have skill sets and knowledge and a worldview and an understanding that you can learn from. And reach out to them and ask them questions. Watch them carefully. Listen to them. See how they interact with people. See how they interact in the world. See how they negotiate. And so when I say, like, my tip for starting something is you don't have to do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would say to not do it alone. That the only time I've ever seen success in my life and things I've been involved in is when the team around me is far greater than I would ever be alone and far greater than really I could ever be. And so don't do this alone. Don't walk this journey alone. Ask for help. That might be in the next 30 years. I have some theories on where business will be going and what will make businesses thrive. I think one is that every business will be for purpose and will have to be for purpose at some level. That the people living on earth today, not just this generation coming up, but the people living on earth today are too aware to continue to purchase products that aren't trying to make the world a better place. Now, not every industry is there yet, but I do have a theory that in my lifetime, every business will be for purpose at one level. The second is that the definition of a good leader, the definition of successful companies, will not be our isolated lanes, but instead reaching out for strategic partnerships and networking and asking for help and where they see it and need fit, so that we will actually see a conjoining of business, a conjoining of competition, a pushing forward of leaders, of business, of people, instead of us staying in our own little silos trying to figure out how to do this thing alone.
Yeah.
So to summarize all that, if you want to get started, ask for help. Reach out to those who need more, who know more than you, and continue to focus on your mission by always keeping your head on a swivel to learn more and to never get stuck in your own silo.
Well, I think that's great. And of course, based on what I do, I hope your crystal ball of all businesses needing to have a for-profit piece, like, I'm all about that. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed too. But it does seem to be going that way. And consumers are demanding it. And people want to work for companies where they feel like they can have some purpose greater than just getting a paycheck. So I'm glad to hear you say that.
I hope so too.
I do think that is where it's heading. So what's next for Generous?
Well,
other than buying coffee, like how can folks help?
Things have changed a bit here recently, obviously. We're strategic planning to survive and maybe not thrive for the short term.
Yeah.
Because one of our big initiatives in 2020 was to actually bring people from all over the world who've been a part of the Generous story to the places that are benefiting from our funds. Travel experience was a big thing that we wanted to do because we had seen that the best advocates for Generous were people that saw it with their own eyes. We in a sense got tired. We felt like we had ran into a roadblock on always telling the story to our advocates. Instead, we're like, come see it, feel it, sense it, smell it, taste it. Just be there with us because what you're doing is real. And we want you to be inspired by truth and not just stories now. So that's changed. That will be next, though. We're going to continue to plan that when we can. We do have a few coffee shops in the Denver area. We will be expanding outside of Denver. Not to continue using it as an excuse because it's not an excuse to us, I don't think. But we also now have to wait for COVID to pass so that we can start to look into real estate again and where we're going to set up shop and how we're going to make these coffee shops be welcoming and safe and inviting. But coffee shops are the next level to us. We also are inspiring what we already have in place, but really pushing a subscription program. And this program, so, we haven't said it yet, but one of the things that we're doing is if you go to generouscoffee.com, you can buy coffee right now. And we have a bunch of single families or singles who are buying our coffee. So this operates just like any other purchase online. Please go and buy our coffee. It's specialty grade, so it's the best coffee in the world. And it gives back. So drink life-changing coffee. Just go do it. It's worth it, I promise. So that's my sales pitch. But we have a subscription program, and we're going to really start pushing that here because what we want to do is be able to be predictive next year on what our sales are this year so that we can start strategically planning with these nonprofits. So as we grow as a company and we increase sales, then we can tell the nonprofits next year you can count on X amount from Generous so that you can plan for your future and be more effective with their strategic planning. Now, a good way to do that is subscription. So you could literally push a button, subscribe to Generous Coffee. It's going to show up to your house, every 2 weeks or every week or every month, whenever you want it to. But we'll be able to see what those sales are for the future and just continue to grow that program. So that's a big initiative for us. And finally, we do have an apparel program. So our t-shirts are made out of plastic water bottles by single mothers. And it's been a great program with us. It's a company called All Made that we partner with. We can't take credit for the manufacturing of these shirts. We just get the shirts from them. But it's been really awesome. So we're going to continue to increase our apparel program. Margins are better with apparel than they are with coffee. And most people wear t-shirts, even if they don't drink coffee. So we're going to start pushing that even more. But I'd say that the three main initiatives are experience, then obviously experience with the coffee shops and our subscription program. We're going to ask people to start switching over to do that more so that we can plan for the future.
Well, I love what you're up to and that there's all these other cool ways that people are going to be able to engage, not just with the brand and the products, but be part of the whole movement through the ambassador program. And I know you're active on Instagram, both the company and you personally. So those of you that want to kind of stay up with what they're doing, that's a great place also, in addition to the website, to kind of hear the latest and greatest.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, I really want to thank you for making the time to speak at the Purpose Driven Business Summit, our inaugural one. And, I really appreciate the perspective and the heart that you put into what you're doing. And I think you're really inspirational for a lot of other people that, they feel a calling to do something. And you've shared some great tips on how to get started with that. So thank you so much, really sincerely, for spending some time with us today.
Hey, thank you guys. And I appreciate you inviting me. And please go to generouscoffee.com. You can reach out to our team, and we would love to hear from you if you have any questions. And finally, I think to close, there's going to be people out there that are starting something or have been in it for a while. I just felt the sentiment to say, It's not easy.
Mhm.
It is really easy for me to get here and talk about it and summarize things. There is a lot of burdens and a lot of heaviness that comes from working in this world. But there's so much joy and celebration as well. And so just know that if you start something, you join on to something, whatever it is, and you start to feel alone, or you start to feel incapable, or you start to feel like you can't do it. We've all been there. I'm there not less than maybe once a week. But there's always the purpose to what you're doing it for, and that always shines above. So thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys, and thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks. Thanks everybody for coming to this session, and we'll see you at the next one. Bye-bye now.